by delaying the election as long as possible, you are buying time to woo back all the voters that you've lost in the last 2 years under Johnson and under Liz Truss.
Rishi Sunak's new year and 2024, which he says will be an election year. The Times this morning says that there could be some signs of hope if only his party were to fall in line behind him. It writes, if Conservative ministers and MPs are truly serious about retaining power, they must give their Prime Minister space to create the conditions for an economic recovery. Mr Sunak, too, must hold his nerve and demonstrate the qualities which have made him a natural choice to stabilise his party last year. Now, Emily Thornberry, the Labour shadow cabinet minister, yesterday said that she thought that a May election was an open secret at Westminster. But Fraser Nelson, the influential editor of The Spectator within the Tory party, writing in his column in The Telegraph, actually argues for a December election. He says that a May election would come too soon and would hide the green shoots of Tory recovery. Matt, do you share Fraser's view that actually on pretty much everything, things are going to improve for the Conservatives next year in terms of delivery on stopping the boats or within the economy?
No, absolutely not. I completely disagree on that. But I do agree with Fraser that the election should be delayed as long as possible because the Conservatives know they're going to lose the election, whether it's in May or in December. But what they can do is mitigate the situation by moving the party's policies more to the centre, and which already they have done by bringing David Cameron back as the foreign secretary. What this does is this reassures voters who, I mean, if you remember the 29 election, the choice we had were between two extremists. We had Boris Johnson on the far right of the party and Jeremy Corbyn on the far left of the party. And I would say most Britons are fairly centrist in their outlook and fairly small C conservative, probably. They don't like big changes. They like small incremental changes. And so if I were advising Rishi Sunak, I would say you want to bring back the voters who were scared off by this lurch to the far right, but who, and I think you can already see this happening. You know, he's already pledged to abolish inheritance tax, which is going to be very attractive to a sort of middle class family voter. And so I think that by delaying the election as long as possible, you are buying time to woo back all the voters that you've lost in the last 2 years under Johnson and under Liz Truss.
Do you think, Miranda, that Fraser Nelson is right that in most of these economic indicators and indeed in terms of migration figures, that things are going to look better for the Conservatives in 2024 than they have in this year?
Well, it can't look any worse, Adam, can it, really, in terms of their kind of stewardship of the economy than it has in the last couple of years. So you can absolutely understand the psychology of the Sunak leadership and those who would like to see them stay in power, saying, play it long, play it long. And clearly, Downing Street, their plan A is to go probably in the autumn rather than December. But they have a quite active plan B, I would say, to leave the option open of going in the spring. And, you know, we've heard in the last few days that there'll be a budget on March the 6th. So that would be an ideal place to sort of lay out perhaps some more tax cuts. And to make that argument, we've got things heading on the right track. You know, when the Tory party can't think of anything else to say, they say don't risk Labour. So if they can make that argument convincingly, they could go in the spring. However, it's true that the national insurance cuts that have already been announced will start in January. And then if you announce more tax cuts, for example, in March, those will only sort of be felt later in the year, et cetera, et cetera. But there are also other changes which will actually make people feel worse off. A lot of people need to remortgage in 2024. And although interest rates have turned a corner, some of those remortgaging deals are going to feel very expensive to people. That also feeds through into people who are renting. The cost of living sort of boost to people on benefits ends in April. So if you're in the poorer sections of society, you're going to feel a lot worse off. And actually, even if inflation is coming down and sort of therefore wage rises and increases in income will actually start to feel a bit more real rather than just being absorbed into extra cost of living pressures, people will still be and this is a matter of kind of fact, wages will still be lower than they were in the mid 2000s. So if people are sort of asking themselves that famous Ronald Reagan question, do you feel better off under this government than you did in the last time you were asked to vote somebody in? People will not feel better off unless they're in that sort of special segment of the population which owns their home outright, doesn't have any mortgage costs, perhaps is a kind of somebody on a very good private pension. Those people probably will feel better off because they'll notice that prices in the shops are not going up so much, that the energy costs are not zooming up again. But for large swathes of the public, they will not feel better off, however long the government waits to go to the country. And I also think the psychology. I mean, I thought the title of the Times leader was quite cheeky to sort of say, put country first and hang on in there for as long as you possibly can get away with. I mean, there are two interpretations of what's best for the country, are there not? And I'm sure their Labour opponents would see it completely the
Right.
opposite.
Okay.
Say, go
Well,
for it now.